Hello and welcome. You found Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott, and right now we're talking to Marcia Montenegro. She's back on the East Coast someplace, Marcia. I don't know where, but you're back
I'm
there.
way over here.
Okay.
It's in Northern Virginia.
All right. Well, welcome. This is our third program, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
And I'd like, if you would please, Marcia, just introduce yourself to us and what you've been involved in and why you ended up on the program.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Yes, I am a former professional astrologer and former New Ager. For many years, I was involved for many years, at least 20 years. I did a lot of reading. I took psychic development classes. I took astrology classes. I had tarot cards. I sort of got interested in a lot of different areas. The New Age is very vast. And I was interested in a lot of those areas, and I was exploring and reading. I went to psychics. I felt that there was a spiritual world there, and that if there is one there, I should explore it because I could get some answers. I felt that it was a way to spiritually grow. So that's what I pursued for many years. I had been exposed to Christianity when I was younger, but I was not a Christian. And I had rejected Christianity. I decided it was not for me. And so I was pursuing these other spiritual paths, which seemed a lot more spiritual and a lot more profound to me than Christianity. That was one of the appeals for me. And I got interested in Eastern religions, and that was part of the whole New Age thing. I was interested in Hinduism and Buddhism, and I pursued those areas as well. And I did the meditations that go along with those. So I was on this spiritual path for many years, and the Lord intervened in my life in a rather dramatic way over a period of time, and took me out of that. I encountered the true Jesus Christ. And when I saw who Jesus really is, that's what did it. It's like, oh, I really see who he is now. And I understand why he came and why he died on the cross. And so when I turned my life over to Christ, of course, that all the New Age stuff and it came to an end. My life drastically changed. The Lord eventually opened doors for me to speak and share information, and that became a ministry. So I'm in a full-time ministry, Christian Answers for the New Age, and I do this by speaking, a lot of writing, my website, and also I've written a couple of books, and I have written magazine articles and chapters for books and entries for various Christian books on the topics that I deal with in my ministry, which are all the New Age topics. So there's a lot of different areas.
And Marcia, you talked about books. I have one of your books here.
Yes.
It's called Richard Rohr and the Enneagram Secret, and you're with Dawn and Joy Vino.
Yeah, Vino. Uh-huh.
Vino, okay. And it's Marcia Montenegro, and I've read it, and it's a very good book. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Enneagram at some point.
Okay.
But it's come up. It's supposed to have been really ancient, and it's really not ancient. But
right.
And of course, people like us are not happy that a former great Christian publishing house, InterVarsity Press, should be promoting this book on the Enneagram. But at any rate, so I think what we're engaged in is what I call an awakening, or awakening.
Yeah. I like that phrase.
Christianity's on the downslide. Atheism is on the downslide. But all this spirituality is now very popular amongst, a lot of young people.
Definitely, yes. There's definitely a rise in interest in the youngest generation that we're sort of aware of now is Generation Z, and a lot of them are very much into, spiritual things, but they don't want to label it, and they don't want it to be associated with tradition, what they would consider to be traditional religions, or certainly not traditional Christianity. So they pursue all of these different paths, with tarot cards, with astrology, and their Eastern religions. And there's so much out there. Of course, with the internet, it's so easy to find things. And it's easy for them because this is a generation that's grown up, with a smartphone and a computer. So that's second nature for them. And they know how to go on there and find all this stuff. And it's just there. And it can seem very, very appealing.
It is. This morning in our local newspaper here in Marin County, in the live section, in the front page of it, was an article about tarot cards, a picture of a lady here who lives locally who makes tarot cards.
Right.
And it tells you your fortune. It's going to tell you about your life. It's going to connect with you, and it's extremely popular. That would not have happened 5 years ago. It probably wouldn't have happened 3 years ago, but it's now everybody just accepts it as normal and wonderful.
Yes. Yes, it's gotten much more mainstream acceptance. These things used to be seen, certainly when I was in the New Age, they were seen as very fringe or very dubious or, edgy or something like that. But then they gradually got more popular, a little maybe less strange, maybe 20 years ago. But in the last, few years, this has become much more mainstream. It's much more acceptable now to say something like, I have tarot cards, or I use tarot cards, and people just see it as another tool, that you use to help yourself, or to find out more about who you are, or what your life path is, or whatever it may be. And it's all seen as okay. I think that there's a very strong desensitization in the culture to spiritually dark things like tarot cards, because it really is, the tarot cards really are dark, but they're seen as glamorous and fascinating.
People will say, well, what's wrong with that? Are you trying to tell me, Philpott, you old Baptist preacher, you? Are you trying to tell me there's something wrong with this? And because from their point of view, it just seems okay. I'm sure when you started in astrology, you had no idea what you were getting into.
Right. Well, I was very intrigued by it. I thought it was the most fascinating thing, I could study. And I thought that there was all this meaning and information there, but you just had to learn how to interpret it. And so I was willing to do that. And that's similar with tarot cards. You believe that there's a meaning. The images of the cards have a meaning. And if you study and learn what that is, then you can use those cards and interpret them. And so it's kind of a challenge for some people. And certainly not in any way does it appear to be bad or dangerous. And that's part of the problem, is these things seem very interesting and innocent. And what I want to throw out there is that the idea behind, you have to stop and think, okay, why would the tarot cards have a message for me? Where is that coming from? So first you have to accept the idea that those images have a meaning. Because when you just look at the cards and you don't know anything about them, you just see a picture. You see a woman on a throne, or you see a man holding 5 swords or something like that. And it's just like, well, this doesn't mean anything. Here's a man, he's holding 5 swords. Here's a man, he's holding a sickle. That doesn't really mean anything to me. that's true. They don't actually mean anything. They're just pictures. But because they have been given these secret meanings, these hidden meanings, people are accepting a message. They accept the idea there's a message here. And so if I can go to someone who knows how to interpret this, or if I can learn how to interpret it, then I can get a message. So what you're doing is you're buying into an idea that there's a secret meaning behind these images. And right away, that's called divination. So you bought into some kind of worldview there that's opposed to reality, really, and reason. But the problem is that it's going to seem to work for you, because when the tarot card reader tells you stuff, you're going to think, wow, that's so true. That's what's going on in my life. You know, she knows that I'm having that problem at my job, or whatever it may be. It's because there's several factors there at work. One is that a lot of things the person will say is going to apply to a lot of people. So that's just generally true all the time for something like that. Number two, the tarot card reader may, if they're sitting there with you, they see what age you are and maybe, you know, what your lifestyle is, and they're kind of know some things about you maybe. They may not think they're doing this, but they're unconsciously picking up things about you. And number three, there's another element here, and that is all tarot card readers and astrologers have spirit guides. And spirit guides they believe are benevolent and are helping them. But the spirit guides actually are fallen angels. And these fallen angels can know things about your life. And so they're communicating information to this tarot card reader or psychic or astrologer. And and may hit on some points that are very accurate. And so that convinces you that the cards really are valid and can really give you information. So, but the problem is you're starting off right away believing that there is a secret meaning in these cards, and that you've bought into a worldview that is in the world of the occult and the New Age. And you've opened a door you've kind of made yourself open to being to being basically a target of information that's going to pull you in further. It's going to pull you in further.
And, you know, these sort of things are ancient. You know, the tarot cards may be somewhat new in terms of our history, but I'm going to take us back about 3,700 years. Marcia, about 3,700 years. I'm going to read something from the book of Deuteronomy, a book of Moses. It was composed about 3,700 years ago. The tarot and all of the occult arts, there's nothing new to them at all. Yeah, here's what it is said. This is God speaking to Moses. When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. The occult is ancient. Okay. Next verse 10 in Deuteronomy 18. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination, that's fortune telling, or tells fortunes, or interprets omens. That's very close to the tarot cards. Or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a medium. Medium, the other name for medium is channeler, and that's so popular. I have a little book at home called Channeling Jesus. You're channeling Jesus. Jesus calling, God calling. And so medium, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Necromancer is someone who talks to what they think are spirits of the dead.
Right.
Very popular today. Oh, your grandmother died? Would you like to talk to your grandmother?
Right.
For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. That's what the scripture says. And so the occult and all these practices are nothing at all new.
Right.
But they're really catching on. Really catching on now.
They are. They're much more, it's much more open now and easier to find these things, whereas it used to be difficult. When I was first studying astrology, I had to go to there was only like 2 bookstores I could go to get the astrology books. And of course, that was before the internet. But later, then I noticed all the mainstream bookstores, the regular ones like, Barnes and Noble or Borders and some of these other big bookstores. And you could go there and get astrology books. So you didn't even have to go to a New Age bookstore. So it gradually became more and more mainstream. And like the passage you read, that's the passage I always tell people. That is where God lists all the practices of the occult. They're all listed there. And they're all in 3 categories: divination, spirit contact, and sorcery.
Yes. The interesting thing is that back in the days of the Haight-Ashbury, I was a Dharma bum. Jack Kerouac before the hippie thing. So I became a beatnik hippie. And what was popular was Satanism. Anton LaVey, the Satanic Church, was right there. He lived in a house very close on California Street, very close to the Haight. And I knew his daughter, and I went and visited him. And here Satanism was direct contact with the devil. They made no bones about it. Here you're worshiping Satan. The demons are right here, talking, here. Now, we're not looking at a rise of Satanism today, but the occult practices that operate on the basis of the power of Satan.
Yeah, right.
And so that's the difference between the old Satanism and Anton LaVey and the Satanic Church and right now, because it seems okay. It doesn't seem bad. It doesn't seem scary.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And there's the deception, and why we're doing this program, Marcia. This is why we're doing this, to alert people to the reality that they're playing with stuff that is extremely dangerous.
Right. And I hope people who are listening and are considering getting into these things or have begun becoming involved would stop and reconsider, because you are not seeing the whole thing. You're just seeing a surface part of it that looks okay or looks fascinating, and you're not seeing really what's behind it and what's underneath it, which is really very, very dark and is really against you. It's against you. It's not for you. It's against you.
It gives you it's entertaining.
Yeah.
You drop your atheism. You're no longer an atheist, but you don't want to be a Christian either.
Right.
So you get rid of the atheism, you get rid of the Christianity, and you got this strange kind of exciting spirituality. You just don't know what's coming. And the only people that are going to really speak out against it are people like us, people who are Christians, who are committed to the Bible as the Word of God. We're about the only ones that are going to speak up and say anything about it.
Right.
And we're easy to dismiss.
We still have to speak the truth and pray that the Lord will use it.
Exactly right. Now, Gnosticism. When we talked on the phone yesterday, you brought up Gnosticism, and that's an interesting idea. Gnosticism was you had hidden knowledge. You had knowledge that other people didn't.
Right.
And I think that's a part of it. I see it with astrology. Right. Here's knowledge about you that nobody can have, but if you do this, you get this secret knowledge.
Right. Yes, Gnosticism is one of the 3 sources of the New Age. So Gnosticism, Eastern religions, and the New Thought movement. And Gnosticism is the one that you can still see elements of that in the New Age very clearly, because the New Age divides. Another thing they do is they divide spirit and matter. So, spirit is always superior to matter. Everything's always spiritualized. the material world is either not actually real, it's a projection of your thinking or beliefs, or it's like an illusion, or it's just this temporary construct, and everything is actually really spiritual. So in the New Age, they're always looking for a spiritual meaning behind everything, even behind just ordinary things that happen. This is part of this idea of the spiritual world that's very big, that I think comes from Gnosticism. Now, the Gnostics thought the material world was evil, and the New Agers wouldn't say the material world is evil, but they do say it's this denser form of reality. It's less, it has, they talk about vibrations, and so vibrations and frequencies are higher in something spiritual and they're lower in something material. And for a New Ager, higher is always good. So when they say higher, they mean it's more spiritual. And so it's more spiritual. And if you're on a spiritual path and you're advancing spiritually, then your vibration is higher.
Right.
This is a very, very common, I had this view when I was in the New Age, right. And all the people I knew had this view. It's very common. So this whole thing about the material world and the spiritual world is very Gnostic in the New Age, and seeking these spiritual answers that are kind of hidden in everything is a very New Age kind of thing. Boy, people think that the Bible's hard. It's nothing compared to these Gnostic stories. Yeah. They are the most complicated things I've ever read.
You're right, and it's hidden knowledge. And the word Gnostic,
right,
it's basically the idea is knowledge that's hidden,
right,
and that you get told these incredible spiritual secrets.
Yes.
By becoming engaged in it, and you see that in astrology. You'll see it in the tarot.
Right.
That there's knowledge that you don't have, but if you do this, you open yourself up to this, you can learn stuff that nobody else knows, and the Gnostics kept it a secret.
Yes, and the whole New Age really is based on that, because the whole idea in the New Age is that you go on a spiritual path, and then you are introduced to, or you come across people with knowledge that is supposedly for you, that will help you, knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise get. And you get this knowledge, and there's a very popular saying, I think it's actually a saying maybe from either Hinduism or Buddhism, but it's repeated in the New Age a lot. When the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And I heard that all the time in the New Age. So it's kind of like, if you're on a spiritual path, then a teacher will be brought to you. You will encounter this teacher who will be able to share this information that you need to know. And like you said, this is not information everybody has access to. So it's this kind of secret. Everything has to be uncovered and interpreted. It's not just open information out there. And that's the whole New Age is like that. So it has that very strong Gnostic hidden knowledge element to it.
Knowledge and power is what it said the occult works on. Knowledge and power, a knowledge that nobody else has, that you can know the secrets of the universe, and you can have it passed down to it through the tarot cards, through so many various forms. And you can learn the deep, dark secrets that nobody knows, and so you're empowered. You're empowered then. Knowledge and power. What Marcia, would you say to somebody who said, "Well, isn't astrology true? Can't you learn something about yourself and life through the tarot cards or through astrology?" What would you say?
No, you can't actually. And this is one of the big deceptions of something, especially like astrology, is because all of the zodiac signs describe an aspect of human nature. And we all relate to many of these aspects. They're true for many of us. So when you're reading, if you think there's some kind of truth there might be something to astrology, and you're reading about, your zodiac sign, and you start reading about it, you will automatically relate to the things that sound true about you. And you will think, yes, that's true. That's how I am. That fits me. And you sort of ignore the things that don't, or maybe you think, well, maybe I really am that way. I just don't know it. But we try to fit ourselves into the patterns. And this is actually a psychological thing that they've discovered, because they've done some experiments with this. They did, there was a professor who, and I've heard it told two ways, and maybe there's actually two different accounts. I don't know if it's the same thing told two ways or if it's two different things. And he had his class in college. Supposedly, he asked everybody for their birth date. And then he came back and gave everybody a sheet of paper, passed it out, and told them to read it. And he said, this is about who you are based on your birth date, based on astrology. And he had them read it, and then he said, how many of you think this fits you? And almost everyone, like 98% or something of the people raised their hand. And then he said, okay, pass that paper to the neighbor, your neighbor behind you, to the person sitting behind you. And they all passed it back. They all had the same thing. It was exactly the same thing, but they all thought that it fit them. I also heard this was done with a personality test. So I think the first time I heard it, it was with astrology, and there's some videos on YouTube where they explain this, and they actually show this, where they do this with some people, and the people think that it's about them, and then they're told, hey, everybody got the same thing, and they're all saying this is about me.
So now you're sold. Now you're sold.
Yeah, now you're sold on it, because it's a psychological mind trick. It actually has a name. It's called the Barnum effect and the Forer effect. There's another term for it, false self-validation, and the confirmation bias is another term for it, why we believe these things. And so once you buy into the idea it might be true, it's very easy to be convinced, because actually when you think about it, astrology is, okay, we have these different constellations in the sky, and what do they look like? Does Aries really look like a ram? Does Taurus really look like a bull? No, it doesn't. If you look at all the stars in that constellation, it's just a bunch of stars. And you have to actually pick out certain stars and make an outline of a bull or a ram or whatever it is, a crab for Cancer. And you have to ignore all the other tens of thousands of stars to do it. So you're artificially creating a picture there and correlating it to the zodiac sign, which goes back to pagan gods, a belief in pagan gods, really. And then you're trying to say that has a meaning in my life. That means something. And you're just taking random stars and trying to give them a meaning in your life. And astrology isn't scientific anyway either. There's a whole scientific argument against astrology. So it's not even accurate.
Okay, listen, we got to wrap it up. We got another program coming up. So, all right.
Okay.
Be looking forward to another program with Marcia Montenegro. So long.